Hello, this is Brianna Pat, and I am here with Jasmine Crockett, who currently represents District 100 and who has been endorsed by Eddie Bernice Johnson to represent District 30. And she has been named one of our Dallas history makers, passing on the torch from Eddie Bernice Johnson to her and her social justice work and her advocacy. So we were kind of diving into a little bit of that off camera, and I wanted to know, going into this job, branching off from working as an attorney and into politics, were there any expectations within your first year or so that you held, and what were those, if there were any?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, Dallas Weekly. I am a huge fan, and thank you so much for being here, Brianna. Let's talk about what it is to be a politician. I don't really consider myself a politician. I consider myself a warrior for justice no matter what. And so while it started in the courtroom, it seemingly is ending in the halls of various capitals. The first capital was obviously the capital in Austin, the state capital. And I was green. I'm going to be real with y'all. I was super duper green. I thought in the middle of a pandemic where we are struggling to make sure that we will literally be able to breathe, we will be able to do great things such as expand upon access to health care, because the state of Texas leads in uninsured with over 5 million people that don't have access to health care. I thought, we'll fix that because we're in the middle of a pandemic. Wrong. I thought with us dealing with the El Paso shooting, and this being the first session since we had that we would actually deal with gun reform. Once again, I was wrong. They decided to give everyone guns. I thought that at a very minimum, because we had teachers that were risking their lives just to go in and educate our kiddos in the midst of this pandemic, that we would put more resources into our teachers who were literally risking their lives. And sadly, we lost some of our teachers, but we didn't do that either. And so I had lots of high expectations. Sadly enough, the Texas legislature did not live up to those high expectations. Instead, they continued to bully those that are most vulnerable in the state of Texas. That's why we had to flee the state of Texas. I did have a warrant out for my arrest, thanks to Greg Abbott and his homies. But I thought, what could be more important than democracy itself in this country? And so I didn't imagine that I would be fighting a fight that Martin Luther King fought long time ago to get us the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But I was wrong again. But here's the deal. I am always stepping up to the plate when it comes to making sure that I represent for the people. Because representation looks like somebody that understands what matters most to us and is unafraid to go out and fight those bullies. And that's exactly what I did do.
And you obviously, I feel like you dived into this perfectly, but how those expectations have overlapped and differed from what you expected when you walked into the legislation. And I guess I'll just kind of transition to my question after that, which is following in the footsteps of someone who really was a representative of the people, being a representative of the people yourself, like Eddie Bernice Johnson. Is that something that can be stressful? And if so, how do you deal with making sure that people know, hey, I'm not just having the torch passed to me from Eddie Bernice Johnson. I am my own politician. I have worked towards my own goals, and she didn't just endorse me for no reason. I can stand on my own, and you don't need to worry about me handling my own.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That was the cherry on the top. It was the fact that the Congresswoman thought that I should be the one. And when I talk to people, a lot of times I tell them I am so appreciative because if you know anything about the Congresswoman, she had been announcing for a very long time that she was going to retire, but she hadn't retired yet. And part of that was just her not feeling as if there was someone who was ready and ready for the right reasons to step up to the plate. And so it meant a lot that she called upon me and said, kiddo, you're ready. It's go time. At the same time, the very reasons that she decided I was ready are the reasons that I can stand and say I have my own record. Some people say, well, you're just in your first session. But what I would challenge those people to know is, how many other state lawmakers do you even know their name, right? And they've been out there for a long time. And so, what she saw was potential. This is about potential. I did file more bills than any other freshman lawmaker. I did present those bills that I campaigned on. I went to South Dallas and I said, I see the disparity in how many people and who is arrested when it comes to marijuana crimes. I filed more marijuana bills than anybody else, and I got those out of committee as well. If you understand anything about our committees down in Austin, they are a bipartisan party or a bipartisan body, and it is mostly Republican. But I was able to get those bills out of committee. I was able to find common ground. I was able to make sure that we push forward with outlawing or reforming no-knock warrants in the state of Texas. That was a bill that I called Breonna's Law. We organized around that, and I made sure that I found that common ground that Republicans could say, yes, we're on board with that too, to the extent that the Republican Speaker of the House made that a priority item. I brought Gun Owners of America and Black Lives Matter together on an issue. That's the one thing that I bring to the table, is my creativity and my ability to organize. That is something that I don't really feel like many politicians really have in their back pocket. And that's because I'm not really the best politician. I speak and say what I mean, regardless as to whether or not maybe it's the most acceptable thing to say. But that's because the things that I do, they're not to score political points. They're the things that I feel like are necessary to move my district forward. And I am very proud of the record that we had. I'm very proud of the fact that there were bills that were passed that maybe I had to have one of my Republican colleagues carry, but they were to the benefit of my district. One of my Republican colleagues carried a bill that was going to bring over $50 million to Fair Park. Fair Park is in South Dallas, and I thank her for carrying that bill, because some people got a little mad with me calling them racist, but I'm just saying, that's what we got out of the voting bills. I got to call a spade a spade. They were specifically going after our minority communities. And as someone who represents what we call a legacy district, the very first African American district in Dallas in the Texas House, I could not sit on my hands. I had to be able to call them out. I had to be honest. I had to represent my district. But at the same time, I had to make sure that we did what was necessary to get us some of the resources that we needed to get. And we were able to do that as well.
And kind of transitioning into my next question, one of the several reasons Eddie Bernice Johnson cited for endorsing you was your familiarity with the voters and your ability to connect with the voters. Do you think this is something that, not just as a candidate now, but as someone who may one day pass on the torch to someone else yourself, is that something that you believe can really help imprint a candidate in the mind of the constituents?
Absolutely. So to me, it is hard to represent people that you never take the time to get to know. And before I ran for office, I was always in the streets with protesters for sure. But I was also doing things in the community. And I've also represented indigent folk and some of the highest incarcerated zip codes in the state of Texas are right there in my house district. And so knowing that and knowing the people and knowing the struggles, knowing the pastors, I think that informs how I legislate. When somebody leaves you, they don't have the benefit of calling on their district and saying, hey, y'all, I'm down here in Austin, or hey, y'all, I am in D.C., and saying, hey, how do you want me to vote on this? You have to know the people and know their priorities so that you can best represent them. And so, absolutely, I wouldn't look for anybody who was saying, oh, I've been a politico forever, I've worked a million campaigns. While I think that there's some value to that, representation isn't about being a political insider. Representation is about making sure that you know the people that you want to represent, because you are their voice, and you can't be their voice if you just don't take the time to listen to them. So absolutely, that would be something that I would be looking for. The bigger you go, so to speak, the harder it is to stay connected. But I'm going to do everything that I can to stay connected. My house district is a little under 200,000 people. It was really, really hard to get to know a lot of those people. This congressional district is 766,000 people. That's going to be really hard. But I've got to make the effort. One of the things that we do is we make sure that we do a monthly town hall, no matter where I am. So I've done it on quorum break in D.C. I've done it from the floor while we were supposed to be voting. I do it no matter what. But not everyone jumps online. So we make sure that we are visible on social media for those that take their news in that way. We also make sure that we do robocalls so that they know what's going on. We also make sure we send emails. We also make sure we do text messaging. We do every form of communication possible to make sure that my district knows that we are well connected to them and we want to hear from them.
And kind of diving more into your background and how it connects to your ability to communicate and find a common ground with other legislators and other politicians, even on the other side of the aisle. Have you found that your background as a lawyer and your background in criminal defense law has helped you in legislative meetings and discussions with those other politicians?
Absolutely. So I would tell people they may not like me that much, but they respect me. And that's what matters. You know, to send someone to represent you that has a skill set, whatever that skill set is, I think I am uniquely qualified because legislation is all about the law, right? We're writing the laws. And so being a lawyer, I don't know that too many other lawmakers really care that you're a lawyer. I would say a good portion of us tend to be lawyers, but having a niche area, it definitely helped because I sit on the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. We write all of the criminal laws. We're the ones that do that, or we block them. There were a number of laws I had to block. And so my committee members knew that I had specialized training and they would depend upon me. And I was able to make better arguments, in my opinion, as I sat on that committee about why a bill seemingly was bad or talk about the unintended consequences that may come as a result of this bill. I remember there was a bill that was proposed by one of my Republican colleagues, and I told him that I was going to have to vote against that bill coming out of committee. It was one of those things that nobody really wanted to be on the record as voting against, so everyone else voted for the bill. But I explained to him, we are going to have like terrible unintended consequences if it passes through in this form. I appreciated what the bill was trying to do, but the way that it was written was going to be really bad. And so the night before it was on the floor, he called me and he said, what do I need to change? Because I understand what you were saying now. And I gave him the changes to that bill. Those are the kind of things that people don't know. This is like the sausage making. But I gave him the changes, and that saved I don't know how many people from being roped into this law erroneously because that wasn't the intent. But he respected my knowledge in this area enough that he called me because he knew that I knew what I was talking about. And so that benefited not only the district, but that benefited all Texans.
And diving into my next question, during your campaign, you used a voter contact operation system that focused on listening to and learning from the community. Do you think that can also help imprint a candidate in the minds of constituents?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I talk to voters, especially when we're at the polls, they care and they want to vote for you because you seemingly care about them. I think voting is relational. I think that people decide that they want to vote for people because they trust them, because they like them. I don't think half the time it has anything to do with your platform. I mean, when you look at, who ended up being president, I'm just saying, like, people vote for who they like and who they feel connected to. And so while we make sure that we have a strong platform, while we make sure people understand that I have the credentials, I don't really think the credentials is what moves people to decide that they want to vote for me. I think it's like literally this genuine level of love that I have for my people and for my districts. And even if I'm not perfect, they know that I'm trying my best. And I'm not doing it because anybody's pulling my strings. They know that I'm my own person. And they know that I do it from a very real place. And so I absolutely think that it matters to have this kind of what I would consider to be relational campaign.
And my next question, how do you plan to continue even further making history and cementing yourself as a historic figure, not just amongst, the Black people who know you and respect you politically, but amongst Texans overall?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that. So it's weird because I don't look at myself as a history maker, like, at all. I'm just a girl that has been blessed by God, and I believe in purpose. And I believe we all have our purpose, and I believe I'm walking in my purpose. To be only the 22nd African-American woman ever elected to the Texas House, I know I didn't get there by myself. I know that there were those that had to be bold and courageous to open that door. And Eddie Bernice is one of those. 50 years ago, she, along with Symphonia Thompson, were the first 2 Black women ever to be elected to the Texas House. But they had the guts to do it. They had the guts to show up. And so what I look at is a responsibility to open the doors for those that are coming behind me. I don't think that it's necessarily rooted in me being Black, but I never shy away from who I am. And I never pretend that I don't understand who I am. So I think that no matter who you are, you respect that. For instance, we got the polling back. So when you're running on the national level, they make you get polling. And, I don't trust polling like that. But, we all got our issues with polling, don't we? But that's a whole other issue. But it's one of those things that we have to do when you're running on the federal level. And we got our polling back, and some of my consultants said, we're shocked. You polled above, single digits. And I said, wait a minute now. Why would y'all think that? And so they were doing an analysis of the overlap between my House district and the congressional district. And they were like, this is what we thought you would poll at. Well, I polled literally at 35 points. I polled over 20-something points higher than my next closest, competition in this race. And that is because I have done a good job, in my opinion, of really transcending my district and transcending really racial lines. I am the type of person, I walked in as a civil rights lawyer that believes in equity. And I fight for equity across the board. I can't say I'm only doing equity when it comes to Black folk. I fight for equity in general. And I think that people understand that and appreciate that because I am consistent. I will enter into a fight for people in general. And so I think that we've done a really good job of getting our name ID across in a very genuine and fresh way, because people are so used to scripted politicians saying what they think the people want to hear instead of really going to the people and talking to them about really what the problems are and being unafraid, right? When I got to Austin, there's a lot of, play along to get along. I'm not really necessarily that girl, especially when you're attacking people. I need to be able to call you out, and I plan to do that. But that doesn't mean that I don't know how to govern in a bipartisan fashion. But don't tell me that you're going to beat me over the head and then tell me that I should just sit there and be okay with it. That is a problem. And when you're doing wrong. We're not talking about, we're talking about glaring things. We're talking about them going after trans children. Who goes after kids? Any kind of kids, right? That is a problem, right? So I think I should be able to speak up and speak out when you are attacking children or when you're attacking our elderly, such as what we see is going on with this voting bill. They wanted to make sure they went after those Black folk that wanted to do churches or souls to the polls. We went after them. They backed up off of it, right? When you sit there in silence, they're like, yeah, we'll do whatever, right? But once they got called to the carpet, they were like, oh, never mind. Well, they went after them as well as the disabled with vote by mail. We see now that 40 to 60% of vote by mail applications have been rejected. This wasn't ever about voter fraud. It was always about voter suppression. But that's what they wanted to sell everybody on, to give an excuse for why they needed to change the election code, so much so when we know that Texas is already the hardest state to vote in. And so, I'll stop there because I can go on forever.
My next question. What do you think has helped cement you as a historic newcomer? I know you just talked about kind of not really considering yourself a newcomer, but I guess kind of putting yourself in the minds of the constituents, of the people who voted for you, of the people who themselves consider you historic.
I think for me, it was that, I took the seat. The seat that I got wasn't a matter of me getting the okay from an establishment. I got the okay from the people. And I think that's really what shook politics a little bit, is that there was someone who said, I'm going to the people because that's who I'm trying to represent. It's not about these closed backdoor deals putting me in the seat. It is me talking to the people. And I think that there will be kind of a new wave of elected officials coming in that will say, historically, the only way you get a seat is if you're invited to a back room instead of going to the people. And so I think that there will be more people that are saying, you know what? I'm going to take this to the streets. I'm going to go talk to the people. I'm going to get the people on my side. And that's what politics really is supposed to be. It's just developed into this thing that most people don't like. They don't like these backroom deals. And there are those that may say, well, you did get anointed by the congresswoman. It wasn't a backroom deal. I mean, there are people that historically have aligned with her that are like, wait a minute, we don't want to go with your pick. And I think that's okay. It's democracy. And I fought for democracy. And I'm okay with the fact that I have opponents. I'll be better when I beat them. But I'm okay with that because that's what democracy looks like. It looks like choice. And I believe that we will fight harder. I believe we will work harder. I believe that we have the best track record so that people can say, I don't have to guess what she's going to do. I don't have to listen to lip service. I can just go check and see what she's done. And that's why we're going to support her. Not necessarily because the congresswoman has said that she's the one to be supported. That may help with some people. But at the end of the day, they can say, listen, we saw Jasmine on MSNBC, CNN, everybody, and she was calling out the people that needed to be called out. We've seen her work on the floor because it's been covered by all of the print media about the stances that I took. They can run video footage on me. Some of these other people we can't find video footage of them volunteering, right? Like, let alone serving. And so this is the job of a public servant. And I believe that I have a record. But at the end of the day, because I fought for democracy and I really believe in democracy, if the people decide that I am not who they want, unlike some other people, I accept that. Because that's what it is to be an American, is we get to decide who represents us, not the other way around. And so I am absolutely accepting of whatever the people ultimately decide. But I know that the people know me and they know my heart. And I feel very confident that they're going to come up with a decision to elect me.
Do you find a background in social justice and activism to be crucial to being a good candidate?
I think specifically for Congressional District 30, absolutely. One of the things that was very moving for me when I ran for my House seat was Botham Jean. And as they went through that trial of that black man who was sitting eating ice cream at his home when he was killed by a police officer, I had an opportunity to try to talk to the family and talk them through kind of what some of the criminal things were that were going on through the trial and explain those things to them. But people don't understand some of the unique challenges that we have, especially in the most African American congressional district in the state of Texas. We have the highest incarceration rate in Congressional District 30. We also have a number of police brutality issues that have occurred in our district. And so I think having that background puts me in a better situation, especially as we are trying to push forward with things like the George Floyd Act. I know what it is to be in court. I know what it is for a federal judge to kick us out. I understand the challenges that come with qualified immunity. Most people can talk about it, but they ain't never tried one of these cases. They don't understand like the intricacies of these specific laws, and I do. There is no one else in this race that understands that, regardless as to whether or not they have a law degree. They have not practiced this kind of law, and maybe in a different district, it wouldn't be so important. But in this district, where we have been victimized, it is crucial to have someone that really has that specialized knowledge.
And I believe that is the end of the interview. Thank you for letting me interview with you, and thank you for all of your work for District 100. And hopefully, I guarantee we'll definitely be seeing that work in District 30. So thank you for allowing me to interview you, and thank you for being a Dallas history maker. And I'm Brianna Patton. I believe that's everything.
Thank you.